So if the Ravens lose, are we supposed to say that they should get another quarterback because Lamar now hasn't had great success in the playoffs? If the Bills lose, are we supposed to say, well, they need another quarterback because Josh Allen can't get him to a Super Bowl? I mean,
You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a teaching tutorial Thursday. That means the professor, Greg Cosell from NFL Films University, is in the house, which is awesome. We are presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. You know the deal. Number one, I'm Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman, 5 teams, 7 years. If you're here for the first time, that is wonderful, whether you're listening on audio or watching on DK Network or youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. I let you know everything you need to know and have the smartest, most knowledgeable guests in the NFL in 25, 26 minutes or less every single day, Monday through Friday. Welcome to all the new listeners and viewers. Love those of you that spread the word via social media at Ross Tucker NFL or at Ross Tucker Pod, or rate and review the show. That's huge for us on Apple Podcasts, or take advantage of any of our glorious sponsors. It's Big Show time.
The Big Show.
Okay, Greg, before we get to these 4 games, there's 3, I would say, quarterbacks in particular I wanted to get your opinion on before we get to the 4 divisional round games. Of course, you can check Greg out on social media at Greg Cosell and check out the NFL Matchup Show all weekend long. Let's start, though, with Quinn Ewers, the Texas quarterback. I want to ask you about Sam Darnold, Justin Herbert. Then we'll get into these games. But Quinn Ewers just declared for the NFL draft yesterday. He's been playing at Texas the last couple years. I know you've studied him in the summer. I don't know how much you watched him this year, but I know you've studied him previously. A lot of teams out there that need quarterbacks. What do you see when you watch Quinn Ewers? What do you think he is?
Yeah, I did him in detail in his 2022 tape and his 2023 tape. Obviously, I know people understand because it's the NFL season. I haven't gotten to the 2024 season for college players yet. Ewers, to me, was always a little bit of a frustrating watch. He always, and again, this is not based on 2024, so I want people to understand that. But he always had poor fundamental mechanics. Too many throws he made without a firm base, the needed lower body balance to deliver the ball precisely. I'd say he's got a plus arm, not a big arm. He throws the ball easily. I would say his arm strength limitations showed up often on deeper throws. The ball kind of lost energy on the back end. When he did set his feet, he could throw the ball pretty well. I didn't view him based on his 2022 and 2023 tape as a high-level prospect. I think there would be a lot of work to do. But as I said, I need to see him from 2024. But he's also not a big guy. So essentially, even though he's not a statue, Ross, you're essentially dealing with a pocket quarterback. So he's going to have to become much better in the details and nuances of playing from the pocket.
He's a backup. I think he's a backup. And honestly, I think he's going to have to battle to even be that. I mean, just watching him. I will say I think he's a smart kid. I saw like that 4th and 13 audible against Arizona State.
Yeah,
in the college football
I saw that
playoff.
on TV. I haven't seen the tape of it, but I saw it on TV.
Yeah, I saw that on TV. I think he's smart. It's funny. I do the college draft podcast, Greg, with Emory Hunt.
Yeah, I know Emory.
And I don't know if it's because he kind of has that 3-quarter delivery or what, but Emory compared him to Kevin Cobb, the former Eagles quarterback, and I can't unsee that now. It's like every time he throws,
from Texas
I
too.
think of Kevin Cobb.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't think that he's. It's funny how it works because when he came out of high school, which was South Lake Carroll, Texas, as the #1 recruit, he was one of those guys that people just assume would be a top 5 pick in a draft. I just don't think he's gifted enough to even be in that kind of conversation.
No, he's not big. He doesn't have a big arm. He's not fast. he's lacking what I would say the physical characteristics. But we'll
I
have a
would
lot
agree.
of time for him in February and March when we go through your pre-draft series and we get into the quarterbacks. By the way, for people that don't know, we talk after the season's over. Greg and I start to dive into the college prospects leading up to the draft. We go through every position, and it is glorious. One guy I need to ask you about after the last 2 weeks in particular, Sam Darnold, Greg. We talked about him last week. He had such a fantastic year. And then the last couple games, I mean, in particular, Monday night, he really looked like he had happy feet to me, Greg. I didn't study him all year like you did, so maybe that's how he looked a lot this year. But I hadn't noticed him just that uneasy and that skittish, I would say, in the pocket. What did you see?
I will say this. If you go back to the Lions game the week before, that was the game in which I thought he missed a lot of throws that we'd seen him make all season. He just missed them with poor ball location. Throws that you just have to make, which we had seen. But one of the things that made him so good this season, Ross, was the fact that he was willing to stay in the pocket and comfortably make late in the down throws. I think, I don't study these numbers, but my guess is for people who do, he probably had as high a time from snap to delivery as any quarterback in the league because he was willing to stand in the pocket and make those kinds of throws. So I think what happened this past week against the Rams is a couple of things happened. They couldn't generate any consistent run game, and the Rams were essentially playing a too high safety structure pretty much right from the start. They couldn't run the ball at all. And then it was the pressure. The last 2 weeks, this Viking O-line, and I mentioned this to you last week, that was going to be the deciding factor in the game, the Rams' defensive pass rush front versus the Vikings O-line, and it turned out to be. He was under major, major duress and just finally succumbed to the cumulative effect of pressure. So, I know it's not you personally, but it's so easy for people to say, oh, well, Sam Darnold became Sam Darnold. I mean, there's reasons, there's reasons why things happen. I don't think anybody was suggesting that Sam Darnold was in the conversation for being a top 5 quarterback in the league, but he had a really, really good season. The last 2 weeks were a struggle, and their O-line is just not very good at all and really got exposed the last 2 weeks.
It's funny, Greg. I actually saw on social media, I think they tagged you as well, at Greg Cosell, at Ross Tucker NFL, at Ross Tucker Pod. Someone said, Greg nailed it with the Vikings O-line against the Rams D-line being the key to the game. That's why I listened, which I thought was cool because it's exactly right. It's exactly what you mentioned last week. What did you see from Herbert, Greg? That was really surprising given how well he had taken care of the ball all year. But by the way, talk about another offensive line that did not do well. Holy crap. No. I mean, those guys were taking turns. Salyer was getting killed by Nico Autry. The guys coming off the edge.
Yep.
Herbert was under duress too.
Well, and see, this is why it's more detailed and nuanced than people just saying, well, Herbert was bad. Because you have to remember one thing. They are a run-first football team. They play a large percentage of their snaps with Matlock, a converted DN, playing fullback. So let's call him a fullback. They play a high percentage of their snaps at a 21 personnel. They couldn't run the ball at all. So their entire offensive identity, beginning through their first 2-3 possessions, was just broken apart. So now they had to play, as they say, left-handed. And they have no weapons whatsoever. They've got one receiver, and that's Ladd McConkey. And he's terrific at what he is, but he's not Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase. So their whole way of playing was torn apart. And not only Salyer, but even their 2 tackles, Slater, who's a very good player, and Alt, who's had a really good rookie year, they were kind of handled. And so he was under major, major duress most of the game, and the game just started to get away from them offensively, and it was one of those games. But, I'm always interested when people say these things because I don't know what their next point is. Is their next point that, well, you should trade Justin Herbert and get another quarterback? What is the bottom line point here? That's the stuff I never understand. It's easy to say these things. What are they really saying?
Well, I think what they're saying is that Justin Herbert's in their mind, not an elite quarterback, not a guy that should be mentioned among the top 5 until he has some sustained team success, has some postseason success.
Yeah,
Right or wrong?
and by the way, you're going to get into that same thing this week with the loser of the Bills Ravens game, and that's going to be a bunch of BS too. I mean, I don't understand the point here. That so are we? So if the Ravens lose, are we supposed to say that they should get another quarterback because Lamar now hasn't had great success in the playoffs? If the Bills lose, are we supposed to say, well, they need another quarterback because Josh Allen can't get them to a Super Bowl? I mean, I just don't understand the bottom line point. It's as I was joking with you before we started. They must think there's just a quarterback store you go and you get another quarterback, and that guy's going to win a championship for you next year.
I love it. I love talking with my guy Greg Cosell, who, as you know, is typically presented by Smirnoff, the world's #1 vodka. Please drink responsibly. Speaking, Greg, of that D line for the Texans, this will be my game. Texans, Chiefs. I'm in the booth for Westwood 1 with Kevin Harlan.
Oh, good for you.
Thank you. Looking forward to it. I feel like, Greg, the edge guys and the corners for the Texans are elite, and that's what gives them a chance in this game. How do you see this game playing out?
Yeah, I mean, we always talk about the Mahomes factor because he can be great anytime. The assumption being it's now the playoffs. They've had a lot of rest. I mean, someone like Travis Kelce's had 25 days off, so the feeling is, hey, it's now playoff time that this offense is going to start to hum. We don't know that, so let's just go by what we know up to this point in the season. Up to this point in the season, this game has the feel of a defensive game more than an offensive game. Wouldn't you agree, based on up to this point in the season?
For sure.
Sure. I mean, playoffs, anything can happen. We know that. But your point's correct. I mean, those two guys on the edge, Anderson and Hunter, they are really good. And I'll tell you what, Denico Autry is a player now. And, maybe the bigger matchup in this game might be Autry against the left guard Caliendo, because I assume Tooney's still going to play left tackle. So maybe that matchup might be as big as any in the game. And he's not talked about a whole lot. But Stingley and Lassiter, I mentioned Lassiter to you last week, I believe, as well. He's had a phenomenal season. And we know what Stingley is. And they are two of the absolute best corners in the league. So it'll be very interesting to see. I guess the big question is the Kelce factor, because, like I said, with 25 days off, you have to assume he'll be rested, ready to go. How they handle him. But, that's an interesting side of the ball. And keep in mind, one other quick point on the other side of the ball, Trent McDuffie has essentially evolved this season. They play him an outside corner, not in the slot. And he has played more snaps of press man than any corner in the league. And that's the Steve Spagnuolo way. And there's probably no better situational blitzer in the NFL than Spagnuolo, and he uses his defensive backs as blitzers. In fact, the last play of their Week 16 matchup, Texans-Chiefs, was a Steve Spagnuolo special on a blitz where Joshua Williams, the corner, got home and basically ended that game.
Interesting. It does feel like I feel like the Chiefs blitz their DBs more than other teams.
Second most in the league behind the Bucs. Second most in the league behind the Bucs. They have the highest percentage of pressures where a defensive back is part of it.
Let's get to the Saturday night game, and it should be awesome. I'm hoping. It's the Commanders against the Lions. What a win for the Commanders, Greg. Their first playoff win since 2005 on the road against the Bucs. Didn't punt, didn't turn it over. I am so impressed with their ability to have these sustained long drives, and also with Daniels' ability to play in the clutch. I still remember last year in the pre-draft process, I don't remember if you said you thought Jaden Daniels was a better prospect than Caleb Williams, but listening to you talk, it certainly sounded like you thought that. What do you think of Daniels and the Commanders against the Lions?
I think that, you're dealing with a quarterback that the legs are such a big, big factor. And I'll tell you, what's really interesting about the Commanders this year is they have played more no-huddle snaps by a wide margin than any team in the league. And they've also put Daniels in empty formations far more than any team in the league. And I think, the reason they do that, there's two reasons really, because it forces defenses to simplify, because they have to simplify and declare in both of those situations, when it's no huddle and when it's empty. So, I think that really helps a rookie quarterback. And then if you spread it out, you also give him room to be able to move and run. And his legs have become a major, major factor in these games. And I'm not just talking about when he runs, but when he leaves the pocket, the way then underneath zone defenders react to him, they react to him. I mean, there was a great example of that last week in the game. The playoff game where it ended up being cover 2, and he moved to his right, and the flat defender and the underneath hook defender for the Bucs just ran at him, and he hit De'Ami Brown for a 30-yard play. I mean, there's so many examples of that because they're not really a great running team. Like, they don't line up and just pound you. You mentioned the long sustained drives. They don't do that by running the football the way you think of teams that get long sustained drives.
Couple thoughts, Greg. Number one, I remember in New England, Brady loved empty set.
Yep.
Because the defense more or less has to show their cards. It's
Correct.
very hard to disguise when you have 5 receivers all spread out. Think about the math. The defense kind of has to declare what they're doing. Number one. Number two, when you go no huddle, there's just not enough time for the defense to be more sophisticated. The defense is concerned about getting lined up and making sure they're in position, so they're going to be more vanilla typically. And then why I love empty even more so with Jaden Daniels and with Brady is, unlike with Brady, with Jaden Daniels and empty, there is still a threat of the run game.
No question.
There still could be a quarterback draw.
Yep.
He could still take off. So like usually you have to put the one back in the backfield so that there's some threat of the run. You don't need that. You can have them all empty. There's still a threat of the run. You know what I mean? You can't just tee off up the field. You can't have 2-3 wide 3 techniques up the field. He'll just go quarterback draw for 15 yards.
No, that's a great point, and that's another factor. But the point, you made the point about what defense is showing their hand. That's why I was saying they simplify. I mean, it makes it theoretically easier for the quarterback, and he's a young quarterback. We lose sight of that. He's still a young quarterback that hasn't seen everything, but it just, by NFL standards, it simplifies the game.
What are we looking for, Greg, with the Eagles and the Rams, the first game on Sunday?
That's an interesting game. I mean, that was the game. They played Week 12. That was the game Barkley had 270-plus yard touchdown runs and gained 255. I'm really fascinated in this game because the Rams, their pass rush front, not their main front, but their pass rush front has evolved into maybe being the best in the league, where they have Young and Verse on the outside and Fisk and Turner inside, but that's their pass rush front. And that's what ate up the Vikings, as everybody saw. But Fisk doesn't normally play because he's under 300 pounds. He doesn't normally play in what would be considered more of their base front. They put bigger people in. The Eagles have a defined identity, Ross. I mean, that's who they are. I keep expecting at some point that they're going to work outside the numbers in the pass game. I thought it would happen against the Packers with their corners. I think it could happen this week against the Rams because the Rams basically rotate 3 corners on the outside. They have Williams, Witherspoon, and Durant. And I would imagine the Eagles would feel that A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith could win those matchups, but the Eagles just have not done much of that. And I do not know the reason why. I keep waiting for that to happen.
What did you see from Hurts last week?
Well, they didn't give him much to do. We started out with a lot of quick rhythm timing throws that got him settled into a game. And then he had some bad snaps where he didn't see things the right way, where he didn't recognize fronts and pressure looks. And you know how coaches are, Ross. If your quarterback is struggling with those kinds of things and you feel you can win without him then being a big factor, that they sort of dialed it back. And they played a close game. Look, when that game got to be 16-10, I'm sure Eagles fans thought, oh, my God, we could lose this game. So the question becomes, will there be a game where they have to drop back Jalen Hurts 35 or 40 times in order to win? We know he's done that in the past. We've seen him do it. We've seen him do it well. It hasn't happened much this year.
Let's get to the game of the weekend. It's the Ravens. It's the Bills. You talked about earlier So excited for this game. So many different places we can go. I'll give you a blank slate on this one.
Yeah. Oh, this one's hard. I mean, this Ravens offense is so hard to defend. I mean, Lamar Jackson is, he's just it's ridiculous. I mean, their run game is so good. Lamar is a major part of that. Henry is just really difficult. I remember Todd Monken last week going into the playoff game, he publicly stated that Henry was the foundation of what they do, which is no knock on Lamar, but Henry is one of those backs. But Lamar makes it so hard. And you saw that against the Steelers. They came out and they almost established Lamar as a runner to start the game, to see, number one, how the Steelers would defend it, but to then make the Steelers have to defend it. And it's just hard. And then the pass game, Lamar has become so much better. He's an accurate thrower of the football now. It's just a really difficult offense, and their use of personnel. They're not like everybody else. I know Zay Flowers was out last week, but they only played 8 snaps in the entire game with 3 wide receivers on the field. They don't play like everybody else. So, how the Bills choose to defend that, they're basically a nickel defense. They're probably a 90% nickel defense. So we'll see. That side of the ball fascinates me. The other side, we saw what the Bills did last week, Ross. They came out and they clearly said we can out-physical the Broncos, and they did. And they play with a 6th offensive lineman more than any team in the league. Can they out-physical that Ravens base front that's really big? That's a really interesting question. I don't have the answer to it. I think that's one of the intriguing elements of this game. Can they out-physical that Ravens defensive front with the way I think they'd like to play? I don't know.
I'll be watching that game from my house, drinking some Labatt Blue Lights like all the people in the stadium up there in Buffalo with their friends, living life to the power of we. Always enjoy responsibly. Beer, Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. Greg, you are the man. Thank you so much for the time, as always.
Ross, appreciate it. Thanks so much.
So I got to tell you something. I'm big on culture, whether it's teams or companies. A couple guys from West Shore Home were out here again yesterday, Jack. They were doing some recalking and doing some stuff around the 3 new doors we got. I am thoroughly impressed by every single person from West Shore Home that's been to our house the last couple of years for the 2 new showers, for the 4 new doors. I told you this before, Jack, but the owner is a listener. He's now a friend of mine, but he's a listener too. I literally texted him yesterday and said, I am so impressed by every employee that's ever been here. So you guys know about all the specials, the 3 for free sales event with the free install, the free upgrade, the 0 free interest. But it's just nice to have guys that come to your house to work that are respectful and professional. It's awesome. WestShoreHome.com/Ross. WestShoreHome.com/Ross. I've been telling you guys all year that Smirnoff is an official sponsor of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. And you already know, because I've been saying it, that they're an official vodka partner of the NFL and Super Bowl 59. Here's the deal with Smirnoff, right? It's the world's #1 vodka, but it's not crazy expensive like some of these other vodkas. And so many good mixed drinks that you can use with vodka. Right now, they've partnered with Complex, letting fans get their hands on some amazing items, handpicked by celebrities. You can get it for $12.99, some of these things, just like a bottle of Smirnoff. That is awesome. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff number 21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Pricing is at sole discretion of the retailer and may vary by state. Please not share with anyone under legal drinking age. All right, so before we get started, you need to know that playoff season's here. And the only thing better than game day predictions are the foods that come with them. Introducing Tums Fantasy Foodball Pool, brought to you by Tums, America's #1 antacid brand, and DraftKings. Each week leading up to the big game, turn football into food ball by building your best game day plate for a shot at winning a share of $40,000 in cash prizes. Inspired by game day bites and tailgate treats, join the Tums food ball action during this playoff season's most heartburn-inducing time. Visit DraftKings.com/TumsFoodball between January 6th and February 9th to enter for free and select your game day plate before the start of each playoff round. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See terms at DraftKings.com/TumsFoodball. When you feel the heat of the game, don't let heartburn keep you on the sidelines. Try Tums Chewy Bites with a tasty outer shell and soft center for fast relief of heartburn, acid ingestion, and upset stomach. Check out Tums Gummy Bites, featuring a soft and easy-to-chew format for fast relief of occasional heartburn, acid indigestion, sour stomach, and upset stomach. Both available at Amazon, Target, and other major retailers nationwide. And for more heartburn relief fun, be sure to follow Tums at Tums Official on Instagram and TikTok.
Tuck's Takes.
All right, Ross, the return, technically. Ravens, they claim wide receiver Deontay Johnson off waivers from the Houston Texans.
Absolutely love this. He's not going to play for them. He won't even, they won't even bring him to Baltimore. But if some team that's desperate for a receiver gives him a decent contract, maybe it's $4 million for 1 year, whatever it is, this offseason, he will count against the compensatory pick formula for the Ravens. This is just smart. There's no downside. There's only small potential upside, but why not do it if you're the Ravens? I love moves like this from the Ravens. It shows me that the guys running the organization are smart and they know what the heck's going on.
The Colts, they're losing a home game this upcoming year because they're going to Berlin to play a game.
Well, first of all, I think it's awesome that they're playing a game in Berlin. Secondly, the GM and the head coach are pretty clearly going to be on the hot seat going into next year. That's tough. That's tough to lose a home game to Germany. I mean, that could be the difference between them keeping their jobs or not. It could be the difference between them making the playoffs or not, is whether or not they win that game and having to go to Berlin. I mean, that's probably not what you were hoping for if you're Chris Ballard or Shane Steichen.
And Quinn Ewers, you guys mentioned it earlier, he is entering the NFL draft this year.
So what's interesting to me about that is he had another year of eligibility, at least another year, and could have gotten a lot of NIL money. And in fact, there are reports out there from people like my guy Dane Brugler from The Athletic that several schools checked in on him about it and were offering him a lot of money, but he's already kind of made a decent amount of money in college. I don't know what his family background is, but he's made a decent amount of money in college. And I don't think he wanted to play for another college program. I think he wanted to finish as a Longhorn. He's from Austin or Dallas or whatever. So I guess I get that. But man, I mean, if you could have locked in $3 million more bucks and been in college for another year, or $2.5 million, that is does not feel like it was the right business decision, but it's not all about business. I will say this. It's already a Thursday, which means we'll be taking care of business tomorrow in terms of whoever wins by spreading the word via social media, by making a comment or engaging with @RossTuckerPod on social media. Love the reposts or the quote posts. Take advantage of any of our sponsors. In particular, use the code ROSS on the Game Time app or westshorehome.com/Ross. Give us a comment on youtube.com/RossTuckerNFL. You're all winners, but I like rewarding a few of you every week. I think we're done here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Speaking of winners, by the way, you're an automatic winner if you go to myfrontpagestory.com and get your significant other or anyone the best Valentine's Day gift ever, a newspaper-style cover story written all about them with pictures and quotes. It's incredible. I highly recommend it. It's called myfrontpagestory.com. If you do it, send me the email, ross@rosstucker.com. I'll send you an autograph in the mail. Backofficescheduler.com, humanheadnyc.com, Sporticulture,